Hi everyone, Scott here from BetterHealthGuy.com. Thanks for joining me for a Better Health Guy blogcast. Today's topic is ionic foot baths and detoxification, and more specifically, the IonCleanse from a Major Difference, or AMD. First, I want to say that everything in this discussion is for informational purposes only. No comments are intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any condition. As always, discuss any potential health-related decisions with your own personal medical authority. I've personally had an ion cleanse for about 6 months and continue to use it twice a week. In my own recovery from Lyme and mold illness, I found detoxification was such a key part of that whole journey, and anything that I could do to incorporate that would support detoxification and not mean taking more things certainly grabs my attention. Today, I wanted to get more information about ionic foot baths from an expert in the field, and we're fortunate today to have the incredibly passionate Tyler Dahm here today to share her experiences with us. She is a holistic health practitioner with a background in biochemistry. She is internationally recognized as a detoxification expert and an authority on autism treatments. Tyler left private practice to focus on training physicians and practitioners on treating autism, chronic health conditions, and detoxification as her full-time focus. She's the founder of Rogue Recovery, a nonprofit that educates parents on autism treatment, and is also the co-author of a book called Evolution of a Revolution by the Thinking Moms Revolution. She lives in Westminster, Colorado with her family and enjoys traveling. Thanks, Tyler, for taking time to talk with me today.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I'm really honored to be here.
Awesome. All right. So, the first thing that I wanted to touch on was getting a little bit about your personal story and how you were drawn to the field of health and to autism. But one of the points that I really wanted to make before we really jump in is that I kind of see autism, Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, even things like MS, Parkinson's, and those kinds of conditions is very similar things, meaning that there is often a burden of microbial issues as well as a toxic burden that's kind of those things behind the scenes. And I think that a lot of the difference in those conditions really is the age that we are when those things come into our life, and then that kind of is involved in what condition emerges. So while we may talk about autism as one of the main points of discussion here around the ion cleanse, it does not mean that people that have Lyme and other types of conditions will not also potentially be interested and benefit from that. So with that, how did you get started in the realm of treating autism?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that yes, I think you're absolutely right on that. If we were to take all of these chronic health conditions, like you mentioned, autism, ALS, MS, put them together, really what it is for me is it's the same causation at the end of the day and really it just the diagnoses is a different label based on how those symptoms will then manifest in that particular patient. So I think you're right on track with that. Now, as far as autism, for me, this is really personal because my son Donovan, who's 9 years old, was diagnosed with severe autism at age 3. And, at the time I was a medical student in Boulder, Colorado, and I thought I knew autism, but really, turns out I didn't know anything about autism because I was always told that autism, they're born with it. They never develop typically. I had never heard of regressive autism.
Mhm.
I did not know that a child could be completely neurotypical from 0 to 24 months in my son's case, and then have an instantaneous regression. And so I had no idea what I was dealing with. And I found that the allopathic medical community at that time also had no answers for me. So we ended up going down holistic medicine road, which is how I became a holistic health practitioner. I couldn't find answers for my son, so I had to be the solutions for him myself. And I had to research and study. And so really it just was about me trying to find a way to heal him because I had heard stories and I had friends who had recovered their children from autism. And so I knew it could be done. I just had to figure out how to do that for him specifically.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you are incredibly passionate about this. And I know that you've really found some things that have helped. And I know that he's doing a lot better now than he was in the past. So kudos to you for really being that passionate person and mother in his life. And I mean, it's just amazing.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I did.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's awesome. So, why would you say that detoxification is such an important consideration in today's world, and how does toxicity play into the modern diseases that people experience?
Oh, that's a great question. So, what I found was that with Donovan, I'll just use him as an example to start. With him specifically, we jumped right into biomedicine to try to treat the symptoms of his autism. And we did that with him for 5 years, but we didn't really see any results. And one of the pieces that we had not understood well enough in his treatment and that we neglected for these 5 years was detoxification. I really didn't know enough about it, and the physicians that we were working with didn't know enough about it at that time either. And so finally, thankfully, genetics kind of came onto the scene here. And I was able to get some excellent information about Donovan, and he had these epigenetic changes. And specifically in his detox panel and his transport panels, they were just lit up with these homozygous epigenetic changes. And for him, it meant that these were expressing, and he was not able to detoxify his body. I mean, almost nothing, down to 15% functionality to clear his colon, his kidneys, his liver, his lymph system. Everything was congested. And so that really began my journey of studying detoxification, especially with the aspect of chronic health conditions. Because if he can't detoxify on his own, how am I going to do that for him? And what's the best way for me to help him?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I have been of the opinion for a long time that probably everyone that has a condition like autism, Lyme disease, mold illness, any of these things, that there is some genetic predisposition to being a poor detoxifier. And if you didn't have some of these, whether it's MTHFR or some of the HLA-DRs that Richie Shoemaker talks about, those kinds of things, I think it's probably the case that you could have the same exposures, the same infections and whatnot, and yet you're out today playing football or baseball and you don't even know, you've never even had a symptom because your body can kind of stay ahead of things, versus those of us that have these detoxification weaknesses or predispositions to weakness that kind of allows us to bioaccumulate toxicity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with you. We pulled data on 1,000 children, and I monitored them for a period of 18 months. And I tracked their genetics along with all of their other labs for things like heavy metal exposure, things like glyphosate exposures. We tracked a lot of their toxins. And what I saw across the board is that every single one of these kids that could not detoxify and had some of the worst symptomology, and not every one of these children had autism. They also had other chronic health conditions. A lot of them had coincidental mold and Lyme
Mhm.
exposures as well. And so what we found is that every single one of them had some mutation that had expressed itself that had been passed down from the mother.
Mhm.
And I found this to be very, profound, is that our parents, there's like this whole idea that, oh, well, we were all playing with mercury thermometers when we were kids and we are fine.
Right.
And I think that's because our exposures, even 1 to 2 generations ago, were so much less impactful than they are now. And what we didn't realize is that, yeah, maybe these parents were still detoxifying, but they were setting the stage for the epigenetic mutation to then pass to their children where it would begin to express.
Yeah.
And that's the key here, is the expression of the mutation that activates the inability to detoxify effectively. And there wasn't one single child in the 1,000 cases that we monitored that did not have an expression of at least two or more detoxification impairments.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's amazing and sadly not surprising. The good thing I think too is though, since we have these influences that cause genes to express in a way that's not supportive of our health, I think as we do things like detoxify, change our diet, limit exposures and whatnot, we also have the opportunity to cause those genes then to express in the way that is more supportive of our health. And so there is some empowerment that comes from understanding that it's not really about the genes, because the genes themselves don't change all that much, but it's more about the things in our environment, in our life, and so on that really affect the expression of those genes. So I totally agree with you. What would you say are some of the experiences that families with autism have observed with the IonCleanse? I mean, I have to say that was really what got me the most interested in IonCleanse, was kind of being involved in the Facebook group and hearing about it at Autism One and talking with people. And I don't think I had ever seen any other single intervention that people could say, wow, we're tracking ATEX scores and we're seeing really significant reductions. And so that's what really kind of got me interested in it. But can you maybe talk a little bit about kind of the experience of a family that has a child with autism and how the IonCleanse may fit in with their journey?
Oh, absolutely. So, in my own journey, finding the IonCleanse was the key for my son. We had to find a way to detoxify his body safely, but more critically, non-invasively. Because at this point, my son wasn't processing anything. So we couldn't put anything into his body to help facilitate detoxification. It was only making him more sick. And this is what I kept hearing from parent after parent after parent is I've tried these drops, I've tried these drainers, we've done this, remedy, and they're just getting worse. So that really began our focus of trying to find a tool. We did discover the IonCleanse using ion detoxification. We did a study using 25 kids on the autism spectrum, and this was with the group, the Thinking Moms Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is that the experience went one of two ways. The kids would either immediately start making these really, really profound gains. And we're talking about things like speech, toileting, eye contact, the ability to accept physical affection, like a hug from a parent, or the ability to say, I love you. Things that these parents have been waiting years to hear.
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge.
It was amazing, and it just blew my mind. And then the other set of kids that were in that same study, what we found is that they would actually have some regressive symptoms on the onset of using the machine. They would have some aggravations, and maybe they wouldn't feel very well. And then it would be like about an 8-week period where we would basically then all of a sudden see these really dramatic changes in them. And I just thought, oh my goodness. So whether it was an instantaneous improvement in their symptomology, or whether it took 1, 2, or 3 months to achieve it, almost every single child across the board had a profound benefit from this. And it really blew my mind, to be honest.
It is mind-blowing. Yeah, but when you see it over and over and over, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? And people clearly have really good results with these tools. What about people that are in the realm of, adults with fibromyalgia or Lyme disease or chronic fatigue? Or, I mean, do you get much feedback or hear much about the experience that people in that community have with the IonCleanse?
Yeah, fortunately, what we as we started using this in the autism community, well, guess what we found? A lot of these parents are Lyme positive, or they have mold illness, or we have one mom she has MS, and she started using the machine for herself, just simply as a tool to detoxify. And she had been using it for 6 months and never really told us her story. And then she stood up at a conference and she just said, hey, I just want to share with everybody that the symptoms of my MS are in remission from using my son's IonCleanse.
Wow.
And I was like, holy moly, like when does that ever happen? And, it's not just, autism parents. In my practice, we have patients that are Lyme positive, and we have even patients with ALS, very, very significant deteriorative conditions that are seeing improvement by just using this tool to help their body release these toxins. And because it is safe and because it's so effective, with having, I think, a minimal risk of having these Herxheimer reactions, we have just seen such incredible improvement in patient outcomes across the board, no matter what the condition is. So, it's really powerful.
So speaking of the tool, what exactly is the IonCleanse doing in the body?
Yeah, this is a great question because I get this a lot. And I think there's a lot of misinformation in the community about what ion detoxification is and what it isn't. So I'll try to give you my brief rundown here.
Okay.
So what we're doing is it's a 2-step process. The IonCleanse by AMD is a very proprietary product. This system does something that no other system does that's on the market. And I did a lot of my research before I chose a model, and I found this one for a reason. And step 1 is that it has a low level current, and the maximum we usually ever see it go is about 17 volts. So this is very, very low level current. But the magic is that current has to be filtered very specifically in a pattern that is biocompatible to our autonomic nervous system, but specifically the parasympathetic nervous system. When we expose the body to that current by putting the feet in the water field, it communicates to the body a relaxation response, which allows us to kind of go into this innate system of rest and digest. Rest and digest is where we do all of our detoxification and our cellular regeneration. So if we've activated this, two things are going to happen. Our body is going to signal that it's time to open up pathways and start discharging toxicity. Toxins carry a charge. Metals carry a positive charge. Organic acids like ammonias will carry a negative charge. And so that's the purpose of the ions. And this is step 2. We use positive and negative cation and anion structures in the water itself. So once we've activated the parasympathetic nervous system with the current, the ions then go in and do their job to help facilitate transport in the body. They're going to help draw these discharged toxins out and into the water field. And, a lot of people like to talk about the detox that happens in the water and the color changes. And I always tell people, when you are using electricity and water along with ions, that is a process of oxidation. You are going to see color change with or without feet in the water. And I don't want people to get caught up in what they see in the foot pan at the end of the session, because for some people that may be somewhat representative of some detox that has occurred through the feet. But for the bulk of people, what we're seeing is that simply by activating this relaxation response, we have stimulated systemic detox from head to toe. We're opening up the colon, the kidneys, the lymph system, the liver, and the detox is happening through increased urine, increased stool, increased sweat. And so it's really a total body system. And what you see in the foot water is actually just a minimal portion of it.
Yeah, and that's great, because that's always been kind of my way of thinking about it as well. I mean, and one of the things that I think is, you put your feet in water, the body is such a significant percentage of water. And so I'm kind of, the way I envision it is, those frequencies then are really kind of, it's not just that they're staying in the water that's in the tub, but our entire body that's, 75% or so water as well, is also getting that frequency throughout our entire being. So it is interesting that, I had a different foot bath years ago that I had kind of stopped using. It just wasn't the thing that I was drawn to as much. And I had done that same kind of experiment where you run the foot bath with no feet in the water and it still turned brown. So, that's the thing that I think a lot of times people will say, well, how is that really stuff that's coming out? And so, my understanding is very similar to yours, that what the color of the water, not really that critical, not so much that things are necessarily coming out in the water through the feet, but it's more that there's that upregulation potential of the detoxification system within the body that, I've heard some doctors say that it can last for a few days even after you do an ion cleanse. So, any other comments? I mean, I know there are some scenarios where, what the water looks like may have some information to kind of tell us. So are there some cases where that is meaningful?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have to think about it in terms of this. Any person that has a systemic backlog of toxicity, for them, using the ion cleanse may be the only pathway that's been created for them to detox, by using the largest detox organ is our skin, and then the largest pores in the body is at the bottom of our feet. So we've opened up these pathways and we're drawing this toxicity down and out. And so for some people may do the bulk of their excretion in the water, and we will see metals in the water, and we can look at the array and see that that's not breaking down, that's still solid. So that gives us a valuable piece of information that could correlate to that patient's history of having high metal exposure. I'll tell you, with kids on the spectrum, I have seen some crazy things in my practice that I didn't think possible. I've seen a child have pinworms in the water.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and it took me
Wow.
took me a minute to wrap my brain around that. And I pulled out the compound scope and I'm putting it under there, and I'm like, no way. I didn't just see this pinworm, but I did. And we had other physicians in the practice that verified it, and I thought, well, that's bonkers. And then, for other people, I've had kids that have just dumped yeast like crazy, big fluffy white clouds of yeast. And I can tell you that the ion cleanse is pretty amazing, but it's not going to generate a organic waste product out of nowhere and just put it in the water. It's not that
Right.
impressive. And so it really is a child that's only has this available pathway for detox. And I think that the reason why a lot of people don't yet understand the full impact of this science is because we've had very bad systems that have been on the market that if you don't do ion detoxification correctly, it's going to do one of two things. It's either not going to work, and so all you're doing is just coloring the water, and you're not going to see any detox, and you're not going to feel any better. Or, worst case scenario, if the current isn't filtered properly, or if you get one of these models that are coming out of Asia that are battery chargers, these currents of the voltage can fluctuate. I mean, even as high as like 35 volts, some of these machines go, and people have been harmed. People have had their heart stop, and worse, or I mean, at least baseline, what they're getting is a stress response. If
Right.
you're putting a stress response in the body, you're actually just undoing everything that you've been working to do. So it is really good to understand how the process works and then make sure you're picking a system that's going to actually facilitate relaxation, because that is the key to the detox itself.
I totally agree. I mean, I think any of these conditions, we're in such sympathetic overdrive that we
Mm.
can't really heal. And one of the challenges is getting the body into that, like you said, rest and digest. And, and I think of it as, the healing side of the nervous system as well, that parasympathetic state. And so, you look to a lot of, in the Lyme community, many or most or almost all of the people with Lyme were very type A personalities, right? So for years we've been in sympathetic overdrive, and then you have this health challenge that keeps you there even more, the fear that keeps you there. And so that's one of the things that was really interesting to me about this system too, is how it can kind of help shift you more towards the parasympathetic side so that you can rest, digest, detox, and heal. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. What kinds of toxins do we think of coming out? So we've talked about a few of them, metals and so on. I mean, do we have any insight around, mold toxins or mycotoxins? You mentioned glyphosate. Do we know if pesticides or chemicals or any of those things are affected by the IonCleanse? And is that something that has been studied?
Yeah, so here's really great information for you guys. So, one of the areas of interest for the company itself of AMD, who creates the IonCleanse foot bath, is research. At the end of the day, this is one of their most important focuses because we really want to share information with patients and clients that is validated. And so I can tell you that the company has been working on 2 IRB approvals to do some really exciting research. And I can tell you that they are paired up with a couple of amazing physicians who I'm really excited to share that information once we get the permission to share it, but
Sure.
to start studying this. Now, here's what I can tell you what's already been done. There are hundreds of physicians worldwide using this machine in their practices that pull baseline labs on their patients. I am one of the practitioners that have always done a baseline lab. From my experience and the evidence that I've gotten back from other physicians when we get down in our roundtables and we share what we're learning, is that across the board, what we have seen is heavy metal excretion is exponentially higher after using the machine. We know that metals are dropping significantly, usually the bulk of what we see clear in about 4 to 6 months, which is minimal time compared to how many years people have spent being sick.
Hmm.
I can tell you that organic acid panels are coming back into balance, and we are seeing things like high ammonias coming back down, and things like creatinine imbalances, and especially with these hormone imbalances that we're seeing across the board with these pesticide and herbicide uses. We've got a lot of patients out there that are Hashimoto's patients that are swinging both ways and they're not able to regulate their hormones. And we are seeing homeostasis in these panels by simply adding in the IonCleanse for about 4 months and not doing any other interventions. And one of
Wow.
the things that I was most excited about is that there are families that are doing the GPL tox lab, which does show the glyphosate exposure, and as well as many other chemical and
Hmm.
petroleum based toxins. And these things are going down.
Wow.
So I do think that, I have yet to see any toxin or toxicant that the IonCleanse has not been able to help with, because it's not about the machine pulling stuff out of the body. It's about the machine allowing the body to do its own natural process. And so the body is always going to eliminate every single thing that it knows is a hazard when it has the opportunity to do that. And I think that's really the most effective way that the system is working for our patients.
Yeah, and so when you were talking, I was just kind of coming back to the whole, is it the bug or is it the terrain? And the way the Ion Cleanse is working, based on what you're suggesting, is it's really helping to improve the terrain, right? And once we improve the terrain, even if we do have some microbial issues and whatnot, I mean, that's indirectly even helping those things, because bugs don't like to hang out in an environment that isn't toxic. So it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's fitting right into the terrain medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm never going to tell a patient at the end of the day that the ion cleanse is going to kill your viral load,
Of
or
course.
that it's going to, you know, um, take care of all the mycotoxins on its own. It's really a supportive device that works with the body's natural process, but it's a supplemental device. It really should always be utilized. If you're a Lyme patient, I would never tell someone stop your Lyme protocol and just do ion cleanse. That would be insane,
Right.
because we know that they need to work together. But I'll tell you what, if you have the ion cleanse on board with any protocol, whether it's Shoemaker, whether it's Klinghardt, whether it's, Bruner, any of these other protocols that we're doing, this tool, as the Ion Cleanse by AMD, has the potential to dramatically change the outcome of your treatment protocol, because when your pathways are blocked and your transport system is not functioning, you can put a treatment protocol into your body all day long, and it may not be going where it needs to go to be as effective. If you have a tool like the Ion Cleanse by AMD that's going to open up that transport system, draw out the stuff that's backlogged, so the good stuff like treatment can go in and get where it needs to go, this is where you're going to really see a profound healing experience. And I'm obviously very passionate about this, and I'm going to continue to share that with everybody, that adding this in could be the difference between a remission or a recovery, or just overall getting your life back.
Your passion is what I love about you. You're one of the most passionate people that I know. So it's amazing how many people you're helping. Do we know how long the detox pathways are enhanced after a session? I mean, is that something that really can go on for days, or is it hours, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got the privilege to hear Dr. Klinghardt speak about his work with Ion Detox, and how he believed that the pathways of detoxification stayed open for up to 72 hours after each session. And me, as a scientist, at the end of the day, I always have to test these theories, because I really like to have quantified data. So AMD did a really great excretion test. They took two people just as samples. They did 5 days of daily urinary analysis. And then they did one ion cleanse session with these two gentlemen, one age 35, one age 68, I believe. And they did one ion cleanse session. And then for 5 days after, they tested the urine. And guess what they found? Just like Dr. K said, 72 hours after that one session, the excretion rate of toxic heavy metals went up exponentially. The 35-year-old, his excretion rate increased by 153%. The 68-year-old had a 64% increase in toxic metal excretion. So I really believe that this is giving us valuable information,
Yeah.
that this session does have a powerful impact even days afterward, and that it's still working to get that autonomic balance and keep us in parasympathetic longer. And I'll even take it a step further, because I truly believe, from what I'm seeing in my practice, that all of our chronic health condition patients, whether it's autism, Lyme, MS, etc., if you have a chronic state of fight, flight, and freeze, and you use the ion cleanse consistently, I believe that it has the potential to retrain the autonomic nervous system to swing back into parasympathetic on its own for longer and faster than ever before. And I do believe that this is going to be a tool that's going to help us overcome these chronic stress responses in the body once and for all.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that Dr. Klinghardt, he's pretty amazing with the things that he just knows. He's like so years and years ahead of his time, and then people are proving things that he's been saying for years, and
I
it's
know.
pretty remarkable. I definitely love. I mean, I was a patient of his for years, and really credit him with being the person that kind of gave me the tools and the framework to get my health back. So, lots of gratitude for his work. What about minerals? Does the Ion Cleanse do anything relative to pulling out minerals? If it's pulling out metals, do people need to take supplemental minerals while they're using it?
Yeah. Oh, so glad you brought this up. There is so much, again, misinformation in this community, especially in regards to minerals. I hope that people will hear me on this. I can only speak to the Ion Cleanse by AMD because this is the only system that I use in my practice and for my family. This machine does not have a mechanism to reach into the body and pull minerals out. It just doesn't. If we were to see somebody that has minerals that are being excreted, so say we were to send the after water to Doctor's data and all of a sudden we saw magnesium, I'm going to tell you exactly what that means. It means that your body either had it in excess because you're over supplementing yourself, or because you have a malabsorption issue that could potentially be to where you're not utilizing that magnesium. If we're seeing this in the water, it's because your body specifically has already earmarked it for excretion. It means that the magnesium or zinc or iron or calcium, whatever it may be, if it's in the water or if you're excreting it, it's because it wasn't able to be used by the body. And so we really need to take a look at what that means as far as are we over supplementing, or is it potential that maybe our body isn't absorbing and we need to look at a different area, maybe gut health, for example, to kind of solve that piece. The machine can only attract toxicity that has been released by the body. The body has to let it go in order for the machine to collect it. If the body has let it go, it's because it cannot use it. So this could be something that was meant to be beneficial, such as a supplementation like a magnesium or a zinc. This could also be heavy metals like cadmium, bromine, lead. We could see things like excess glucose in the body. If we have a patient that has type 2 diabetes and we see glucose in the water, there's a reason for that. That's because it's excess and the body needs to rid itself of it. So as far as supplementing minerals during detox, Ion Cleanse or not, anytime you're undergoing detoxification, you are burning ATP at much higher rates than you are if you're just, doing any other protocol or if you're just sitting around. So, what is the fuel for ATP? Well, one of the most critical pieces of it is minerals. So, I do recommend that patients make sure they're doing a mineral supplement, and it doesn't even have to be a supplement. Make sure your diet is good. You've got some good food that, isn't adulterated. Whatever it is you want to do to support minerals. If you're undergoing detox, I really highly recommend that you do that just in general. And that's
Yeah.
for everybody across the board.
I 100% agree. I think that a detoxification program that does not have trace minerals, really, it's missing the foundation. It's like building a
Yeah.
house and putting up the walls and then going, oh gosh, we forgot to pour the concrete, right? I mean, it
Right.
part of the reason that the body attracts and holds on to heavy metals, for example, is because we are deficient in minerals, right? The food, the soil, all of these things, it's so different. And so
Yeah.
just by flooding the body with appropriate minerals, I think that also then helps detoxification because we then don't need to hold on to all of these metals. So totally agree with you. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other supplements at all that make sense for people to do when they're doing Ion Cleanse? Should they focus more on liver support, kidney support, glutathione, binders, anything at all, or is that really not necessary?
You know, I tell people this all the time. It doesn't take a medical license to do detox, okay? But it does take some respect. Detoxification is a very individualized process. I like to tell people to work with their provider. If you know that you have a situation where maybe glutathione is something that you need to support, whether it's your methylation, whether it's your metabolic, whatever it is that you may have a unique situation, then I want you to keep that stuff on board. But I will tell you that in order to use the machine, none of that is absolutely it's not necessary. You can literally get the machine in your home, you can plug it in, put your feet in the water, and you can go and just start detoxing, because this machine is going to help support all of these other systems. Once we start ridding the body of toxicity, then we find that a lot of these epigenetic mutations that we were talking about earlier, they start to self-correct because they don't have the exposure that is the underlying catalyst for the expression.
Hmm.
So I really tell people, I like to recommend get your feet in the water. Just start doing that immediately. And I tell them, if you have the time to do 4 months of good solid detox using your IonCleanse by AMD, then take a look at what's left and see what you may need to support after that. And I think that's where we have found the best information for patients, so that they're A, not putting something more into their body that they can't process, and B, they're not wasting money on a supplement that they may not have actually needed, that what they really needed was detox.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. Just get your feet in the water. I love it. That's
Just
fantastic.
do it.
It's interesting when I first saw the Ion Cleanse, and I wondered, kids on the spectrum generally don't stay still and don't like to be in one place, and they're kind of running around and whatnot. And so I thought, how are you going to get a kid to do that? And then I saw loads of pictures on the Facebook group of, people at their kids at their play table with their head down taking a nap while they had their, foot in the foot bath and whatnot. So, I mean, is it pretty common that kids will do the foot bath?
Absolutely. You know what is really great about it is that was actually one of my fears with Donovan, because he is so hyperactive when we had started this process. And it turns out that everything that I've been saying for this whole interview is true. We are creating a relaxation response in the body. And these kids, it facilitates it for them. And guess what? They love it. They love to sit for the session. They like to sit there and just finally relax, and you can physically watch them just take this deep breath, and they just kind of and it's like for the first time in a long time they're able to just finally not be stuck in fight, flight, and freeze mode.
Hmm.
And it's the most beautiful thing to see. And then what happens is they begin to seek it out more and more and more, and they will sit there and they'll hold their attention, and their focus gets better, and their ability to just stay calm even for that brief window of cleansing it's a really, really profound thing to witness. And I'll tell you that I really like the Ion Cleanse specifically because, say that your child is the exception to the rule. Say you put their feet in that water, and no matter what, they're still just not ready to sit still. This system that was developed by Dr. Maroney 15 years ago, the array plate itself is completely safe to submerge in water.
Hmm.
So if your child can't sit still for the session, you can start by putting them in a bathtub with about half full of water, and you can just put that little black array box in there, and they can play safely and be contained while you're watching them, and they've got toys, and they can still do their detox until their body is ready to accept being able to sit in the chair.
Hmm.
But either way, I mean, I've never seen a child not sit for an Ion Cleanse session, not ever.
I know it's amazing some of the stories I read where they talk about, having the tub like in a closet or cabinet or something, and then after a while the kids will like go and like pull it out of the cupboard because they want their foot bath. It's pretty cool.
It's true. Even our nonverbal kids will just go get the foot bath system and walk over, and they can't say foot bath, but they're shoving it in their parents' hands because they want to do their session.
Yeah, no, that speaks volumes. So, how frequently would you normally suggest people use the foot bath, and how long does it take before most people start to see some kind of result?
Yeah. So the adult recommendation is half an hour every other day. I will tell you that a lot of people have given me some great feedback that they will do sessions whenever their body tells them that they need a session. If they feel as though they need to sit down and do a session, even if it's 2 days in a row, I always tell them to honor that, because their body knows better than anything else. And so, while that's the guideline, if somebody needed to cleanse 3 days in a row because they had a situation going on that they needed to clear some backlog, I tell them to go for it. In regards to kids specifically, we have a couple of different protocols in place, and we know certain kids are sensitive to detox. So I always tell them, especially our kids that are in the Lyme community, I tell them to start low and slow. Maybe just go with like 15 minutes at a time, wait a couple of days and see how that detox unfolds as we're in that 72-hour window of excretion. And then we go back in and do a session. And then some kids are doing 3 days on, 1 day off, and they're doing half an hour to 40 minutes at a time. And that's what their body needs.
Hmm.
So again, it just goes back to, detox is a very individualized process. And I tell people to work with their practitioner, or if they don't have one and they just want to, like I said, get their feet in the water, they can join the Facebook group. It's called IonCleanse by AMD for ASD. And this is for everybody. They can come in and learn and start learning what's working for certain patients and certain kiddos. And they will find their schedule quickly. And once they find their schedule, it's pretty amazing.
And then is there also a Ion Cleanse by AMD for everybody, or is there a separate group still as well?
Yeah, there is a separate group that says for everybody.
Okay.
And people are welcome to come into either group.
Okay.
I moderate in both groups. And so the ASD group is the larger group
Yeah.
with a bigger population of people, but they're welcome to come in either one of them and learn more.
Okay, awesome. So I've had people ask, do you need to use distilled water, reverse osmosis water? Is there anything tricky about that? So any comments about the water?
Nope, the water doesn't matter at all. Of course, at the end of the day, tap water is preferred simply because it already has a good content of crap in it that we can use. And it's crap. I'm literally just using that word. So that it has a lot of junk in it that helps facilitate the conductivity of the ions.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to do that. We've got lots of families that have RO systems and they've got Berkey filters and they prefer to use distilled. It doesn't matter. The machine is going to be functional for your detox no matter what kind of water you use. It may ask you to add a little more salt to get that conductivity, but at the end of the day, you're still going to be able to use your system.
Yeah, and is the salt something that most people, I know in my environment here, I do have to add some salt to get the voltage low enough that it's ideal. So is it pretty common that people do need to add salt, or is that also pretty individual?
The majority of people will have to add salt depending on their water, but it's interesting. We were just at the Taka National Conference out in Orange County, California, and we didn't have to add any salt to those sessions at all. The water that was coming out of the tap was already at a state where the voltage was right where we wanted it to be. So, I think it's great for people to know that, because a lot of times you'll hear, oh, it's the reaction of the salt that's causing the color change. And that's not always
Right.
true. So.
Yeah, totally agree. So any contraindications for the Ion Cleanse if people have, a pacemaker, metal implants, breast implants, anything that it would not make sense to use the foot bath under those conditions?
Yes. So one of the primary contraindications is a pacemaker device or any kind of electrical implant in the body, whether that's in the brain or in the heart. Anything that sends an electric signal is contraindicated. There's not, so there hasn't been any reports of safety issues. It's simply a matter of the fact that it's never been tested. And I don't like to experiment
Yeah.
on people. So
Yeah.
don't do it. Just don't do it.
Right.
And second contraindication is blood thinners. The reason, again, is not because there's an issue here, it's because it hasn't been studied. And if there was a risk of the medication levels dropping and that would put someone at a risk of having a clot, don't do it. Just don't put yourself at risk. And what I do is I really like to tell people, if you're desperately wanting to detox and you believe that this system is for you, work with your doctor. Keep
Absolutely.
keep checking those medication levels and monitoring them. We have a lot of parents that decided to use it for their kids having seizures, even though they were on seizure medication, and they went with their doctor and monitored levels, and it's been a good outcome for them. But that's what I can tell you is always, always, always work
Yeah.
with your doctor.
I mean, I don't think any of these conditions are do-it-yourself things. People definitely need to find a licensed provider,
Yeah.
skilled provider that can really guide them because they are complex. So you mentioned blood thinners. Are we primarily talking about things like Coumadin and warfarin and those kinds
That's
of things? Is it okay for people that are maybe using Baluch or lumbrokinase or something just as part of their, maybe Lyme treatment or whatnot, enzymes and so on? Those, I'm guessing, would not be a contraindication in most cases, true?
That's correct. So
Okay.
if you're using natural medicine tools that are not a pharmacological drug, those are not contraindicated with the ion cleanse because they work in a very different way inside the body. And we have not had any risk with that. So I would
Okay.
say it's only the prescription drugs where you need to be careful.
Okay, great. And what about initial reactions? Do some people either because they overuse it too much initially, but do some people have really strong reactions or generally not?
Yeah, so most people don't, but there is a population of people using the IonCleanse that can, coming out of the gate, opening up these basically these floodgates of detox. You can experience a Herxheimer reaction, and what that looks like is it can be dizziness, it can be nausea, it can be a headache that lasts for a couple of days. Um, it can be even the worst case scenario I've seen is someone who had a migraine for 3 days and had some vomiting associated with that. And this person was Lyme positive with a very, very significant history of mold illness that she had just begun to treat. And one of the first steps she did was IonCleanse. And so this was her first foray into detox. That's
Yeah.
the worst case I've ever seen. But yeah, everyone's going to react different. It's detox. It's the potential to have a reaction, although it's more rare with the IonCleanse. It does happen.
Yeah, and interestingly, I would think when it does happen, if people kind of maybe, use it a little bit less in terms of the duration and kind of get to where they're using it in a way that their body likes it, I would think that those people ultimately, in many cases, would have really good results because obviously it was doing something that was necessary, right?
Yes, I would agree with that entirely. If you are one of the people that gets your ion cleanse system and you start having Herx reactions, um, back down.
Yeah.
Just cut your time in half and then put more days in between the sessions because it could be that you're just sensitive to detox or that you are so toxic that everything is trying to escape at one time now that it's finally able to do that. And so doing less is is more for these people.
Awesome.
So absolutely.
So I think we've really more than covered it. There may be a couple of additional comments, but the question that I get a lot is, why should I spend, almost $2,000 on the Ion Cleanse when I can go on Amazon for $200 and get a detox foot bath? And so, we've certainly covered some of them. I know there's some additional things around medical grade. Things that are in the Ion Cleanse and whatnot. Do you want to add any additional comments around that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to tell you straight up, you get what you pay for. This machine is $2,000 because Dr. Maroney put time and energy into developing this system so that you or your child or your patients are always going to be safe using this technology. It has 3 different fail safes so that when we're mixing water and electricity, there is no risk of the body being harmed by that. It also has medical grade power supply, as you touched on, which is really, really important. It has medical grade steel that's used in the array plate so that we are not using toxic mixed metals and then exposing it to the body. It also has a proprietary system for that current that I talked about earlier, where it's filtered specifically to create relaxation response. That is because at the end of the day, we never want to put a body into a stress response or you're going to feel very sick and it's going to be detrimental to your healing process. So you get what you pay for. Please trust me on this. Try the system. You have 60 days to try the system risk free. If you don't like it, it doesn't work for you, or you want to go back to your $60 Amazon model, send it back. That's absolutely fine. Get your money back. But I promise you, once you try this system compared to all the others, you're going to know why it's different, why it's superior, and why the cost is higher. And it's 100% worth it.
So to your comment about sending it back, so the guarantee is that if you have any reason after 60 days or within 60 days that you don't think it's the right tool for you, you get your money back. Is that the guarantee?
Yeah, and this is the only reason I even bought the system to begin with. So you buy the system, and the day that it gets delivered, that's day one, and then you have 60 days to try it. So if on day 60 you decide I don't want this system, you can call up the salespeople at AMD and say, "Hey, I gave it a shot. I don't like it." You box it up, you ship it back, and they're going to give you a full refund. They're really, really good about this. And I want to just throw in my quick disclaimer. I don't work for the company. I'm not a salesperson. I actually don't even make referrals. You could write my name down and that's going to get donated to a nonprofit. So
Well,
the point is that I believe in this system and I believe in the company, and I've seen families that it didn't work for and they got their money back and they took it and put it somewhere that was going to be more beneficial for them. So it's risk free. You don't lose anything at all. Just get it.
Awesome. So any thought leaders in the healthcare field or practitioners that are using this in their practice that you want to share any additional comments or insights from?
Oh gosh. So one of my very, very favorites is Dr. Tracy Fritz. She is a wonderful Lyme specialist that also deals with autism and mold illness. She started using this product in her practice because she was seeing the same thing that I was seeing, is that these patients, she was doing everything right and they couldn't detoxify, so nothing was working for them. And she threw the machine in her practice on a whim based on a patient recommendation that had bought the machine at an autism conference. And then all of a sudden, guess what? She started seeing profound healing in all of her patients. And so she's now sharing that this worldwide at conferences as well. And her practice is Little Flower out of St. Louis, Missouri. She is incredible. Watch all of her webinars and learn more. She's amazing.
Awesome. Any last comments that you might want to share?
No, I think I've
you, I think you did. You covered it amazingly. So it has been absolutely wonderful having you here today, Tyler. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your passion. I know that you are changing the lives of children. I know you're changing the lives of the people you come in contact with. I have watched your story over the last several months that we've been getting to know each other, and I think you are just an amazing, passionate person, and I just can't say enough good things. So with that, I'm feeling like today is my day to go do a foot bath and to benefit from that parasympathetic state and get some ions. So thank you so, so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.